Hey guys, welcome back to another edition of Rockin' H Woodshop. It's been one more week and I've got another project to show you. And today, it's how to make this crosscut sled out of plywood and ash. Stay with me, that's coming up. Now we're first going to start off with making the runners that are going to go in the miter slots of the table saw. And I happen to have left over some pecan that I used from a prior project, and the grain pattern on the end is perfect for what I need, and I'll explain. Now, you want the grain pattern of your runners to be running as vertical as possible. So we're only going to use the grain in this area right about here. And then we're just going to cut these two pieces off the sides and then see how many runners that we can get. Okay, now it's time to measure for the miter slots. And we're actually going to measure the width as well as the depth. And it reads out at 3/8 of an inch. Now if we cut our runners at 3/8 of an inch, they're going to bottom out on the very bottom of this slot. And that's something we don't want. So we're going to cut these just shy of that, about 5/16 of an inch. Okay, now it's time to measure the width. And I've taken my calipers here, but it looks like the magic number that we are going to be shooting for is going to be around 0.752. It comes out at 0.755, so I am almost there. I think we're there. We're just going to run them, at least 2 of them through to the final dimension and see how they fit. Now, we just got them cut down and I want you to check this out. Not too tight, not too loose, and absolutely no play. Love it. I'm just going to put a little center mark, which will help me run a line down the center to let me know where to drill my holes. Now that we've got the wood in place and we got our lines drawn, we're just going to go ahead and make our drill pilot holes. Now we're just going to screw them down. All the screws countersunk and in place, and what I did on the bottom side was just fine sand the runners to make sure that they're going to be just the right size all the way down the miter slot. And then I rubbed some paraffin wax on all sides of the runner and the bottom of the sled just to make sure that it's going to slide nicely, and it does. First, cut 2 long sections at 3 inches wide times 30 inches long. Then cut 2 short sections 12 inches long and 3 inches wide. Then just run them through the glue-up process, gluing both pieces together, both the short and the long pieces. Then let them cure overnight. Once they cured, we're going to run them through the joiner fence jig, squaring up the sides and the face. Then after 1 or 2 passes through the planer to make the other face parallel, we're going to cut it to its final dimension of 2 7/8 on both the short and the long pieces of the fence. Now as you've seen, I took some leftover ash and made the 2 fences that are going to be just like this. So we're going to glue these up together. Alright, all I'm doing now is just laying out the scalloped lines using a paint can. And all this is just for some style points and to reduce a little bit of weight. Before I cut this out with the jigsaw, I want to score this line on the cross grain so it does not tear out real bad. We're going to curve this as well. Using the biscuit joiner and some number 10 biscuits, we'll attach the end to the sled. Okay, now that the sled is going to set and cure for a little bit, the fence has had plenty of time to cure, so we're going to take it out of the clamps and do some final stuff on it. Okay, everything has got a nice chamfer on it, including the dust relief down here on the front face. We didn't do this side because it doesn't need it. What I'm doing here is establishing a line reference to mark for my pivot point where the fence is actually going to go. This will help me determine and fix any errors in regards to the fence being out of alignment. Now before we can install the fence back here, we need to establish where the blade is at. So in order to do that, we're just going to lay the sled in the miter slots like I have here, and then slowly raise the blade up into the sled while holding it down, making sure that your hands are clear of where it's actually going to come out. And then we're going to push the sled forward to a certain point, but not go all the way through. All right, now it's time to attach the fence itself. We're going to line up that pivot point line that we made on the sled as well as the fence. I've got a little tick mark back here to let me know where that's at. Now we're going to clamp that down, and then we're going to pre-drill through the bottom into the fence and then screw in one screw right there. All right, now we're going to take a square and set it up against our blade as a reference because we're wanting to try and get this as 90 degrees as possible. So I've put my square here right up against the blade, above, or excuse me, I should say below a tooth on either end, because I don't want this to ride on a tooth and then ride on the blade in a different spot, because that's going to throw it off. Now we've carefully pulled the sled back while holding that setting in place, and now we've got it clamped. We're going to pre-drill a hole down here at the end, attach a screw. We're going to make a series of cuts and see how it works. So here we go. All right, now I've got a piece of plywood here that we're going to make a series of cuts on, and we're going to use the 5-cut method because it is the most accurate. But this is just going to be a series of 5 cuts on one board, and then we're going to measure the thickness of that final cut and see how much we're off. We're going to make a mark here to let us know that this was our first cut, and then when we cut, we're going to turn it clockwise 5 times. Or 4 times, whatever it is. But once we make it back to this spot, then we're going to cut off a strip and then measure the distance at both ends. We're going to take the top measurement, subtract the bottom measurement of that 5th cut strip. Then we're going to divide that answer by 4. Then divide that answer by the length of the cut of that 5th piece, which is 13.85, which translates to 13 7/8. And then you multiply that number times the distance of your pivot point to the end of your fence on the opposite side, which mine is 28 3/4. After I've done this part right here of 0.013. So I am 13 thousandths off right now, and I want to get it at least below 10 thousandths. My number is actually a negative number. Okay, what we're going to do first is adjust for the error, and I've already cut a piece that has a point to it because I want a very small surface area to measure from. So we're going to lay that on the very edge, and my error was 13 thousandths. So I've got a feeler gauge that you can get at an auto parts store, and I've got the 13 thousandths blade out, and we're going to set that in place because we need to move the fence this direction. So we're gonna go ahead and put the feeler gauge in there, and you don't want this like super tight. You just want it to be the actual distance that you need. And it's gotta be right at the very end. Now we're just gonna undo that screw and push the fence forward just that little bit. Clamp it back in place. Then you want to pre-drill another hole different from the one you use, because if you try and use the same one again, it's just going to go right back in the same place. We're going to measure the top, which is 0.991. Now the back, 0.989. That is 2 thousandths from being off. I am super happy with that. Perfect. Well guys, that does it for making the Crosscut table saw sled. I highly recommend making one of these for yourself. You don't necessarily have to make it my way. There are so many different versions out there on the internet, so do your research and find out which best is going to work for you. So guys, if you support woodworking for free like this, be sure to comment, rate, and subscribe to my channel if you are new to it. Keep the comments coming and I will send out any follow-ups on any confusion that you might have. But if you have any questions, be sure and email me at rhwoodshop@gmail.com. I'll be glad to help you in any way I can. So until next week guys, I will talk to you then. Be safe in your shops.